must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
A very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for finding time to be with us today. This is Diaspora Dispatches. We get to bring you the latest news from the continent of Africa. My name is Miriam Ugutu, and it is just a minute past 3 p.m. here in Nairobi. That is East African time. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you are tuned in today in the world. And we start our news from Eswatini, where a nurse union in Eswatini says security forces shot and injured at least 30 of its members who held a pro-democracy protest on Wednesday. The Swaziland Democratic Nurses Union said nurses and other workers demonstrating in the main capital, Bambane, were met with what is called an unprecedented show of force by soldiers and police. Internet access remains shut, making it difficult to gather up-to-date information. Anti-government protests have swept Africa's last absolute monarch in recent weeks. Southern African envoys are expected to travel to Eswatini in the coming days. Meanwhile, the Eswatini government has directed the country's main telecoms operator, MTN, to shut down social media giant Facebook. Report says the move is part of a bid to curb pro-democracy protests that have been going on for months in a country ruled by absolute monarch. As I've said up there, now privately owned Swaziland news website reported on the government accusing social media platforms of irresponsibly spreading misinformation, which was contributing to the violent attacks and events around the country. And then we head over to South Sudan, where the United Nations says more than 700,000 people have been displaced by the worst floods to hit South Sudan in decades. At least 40 people have died across the country as heavy rains and flash floods destroy livestock, farmlands, and homes. The floods have mainly affected 4 states. Those who have fled have been displaced numerous times over due to conflict and 3 years of consecutive flooding. Scientists have blamed climate change for the flooding in South Sudan and other countries in Africa. And then we head over to Nigeria, where the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, has appeared in an Abuja court today. The photos shows Kanu and members of his legal counsel, Efeanyi Ejiofor, Aloy Ejimakor, and others in the courtroom together. Kanu was arraigned at the federal court in Abuja over charges of treasonable felony and terrorism. A 7-count charge was last week slammed by the federal government against Kanu, who has been in the custody of the Department of State Services. His lead counsel, Ejiofor, in a press conference yesterday, urged authorities to provide his client in court today to allay fears held by people in the southeast about his well-being. During the last proceedings, the IPOB leader was not brought to court. This was blamed on logistical issues by the prosecuting lawyer, Mohammed Abubakar. Meanwhile, the 3 major towns in Imo State, Owerri, Olu, and Okigwe, were deserted on Thursday as the trial over the treason and terrorism charges against their leader, Nnamdi Kanu, by the federal government began at the federal court in Abuja. In Owerri, the state capital, banks, schools, markets, malls, fuel stations, and business outlets were all shut down. All the roads, streets were shadows of themselves as residents stayed indoors in compliance with the sit-at-home order issued by IPOB in respect of Kanu's trial. And security operatives also barred activist Omoyele Sowore from accessing the courtroom to witness the trial of Nnamdi Kanu. Sowore, who was dressed in traditional Isi Agu attire, was told to go back by operatives of the Department of State Services and the Nigerian Police Force. Sowore, who spoke to journalists, said he was at the court for a number of reasons. If Nnamdi Kanu should be found guilty, he faces life imprisonment. And the latest from the court is that Kanu has pleaded not guilty to the amended charges against him by the federal government. And then we go to South Sudan, where the United Nations says the threats against civil society activists in South Sudan violate the revitalized peace agreement signed in 2018 to end 5 years of conflict. The United Nations Commission on Human Rights says it has noted with alarm and dismay the ongoing threat, harassment, and intimidation of human rights defenders, journalists, among others. It says a credible threat by the state's national security services on the lives of the activists has forced them to flee the country. It also noted that the NS forces had continued to harass colleagues and families of the activists, many of whom played a key role in the country's peace and justice process. The United Nations Commission says bank accounts of the activists and those of the non-government organizations they lead are among those recently blocked on government orders. Then head over to Cameroon, where Cameroon's 5-year conflict could be taking a significant new turn, with reports that the English-speaking separatist group are getting help from armed groups in neighboring Nigeria. After 2 weeks, after 2 attacks by Anglophone militants, which cost the lives of 15 Cameroonian soldiers last month, the army issued a statement declaring the separatists have used heavy weapons for the first time in violation of international humanitarian law. It went on to add that the rise in power of these terrorist groups is largely due to their cooperation with other terrorist entities operating outside the country. Contacted by the BBC, Cameroonian Defense Forces spokesperson Colonel Celine Atonfak Nguemo did not specify which foreign groups were allegedly working with the Anglophone separatists, who say they face discrimination in the country dominated by French speakers, but also alluded that there is a possibility that the Anglophones are working with the IPOB in Nigeria. And then he head over to Rwanda, and prosecutors have filed an appeal against the sentence of Paul Rusesabagina, the man portrayed as a hero in Hollywood movie about the Rwandan genocide. Prosecutors challenge Hotel Rwanda hero sentence. Rusesabagina, 67, was sentenced to 25 years in jail last month after being found guilty of backing a rebel group behind deadly attacks in 2018 and 2019 in Rwanda. Rwandan prosecutors had sought a life sentence against him and had indicated they were not happy with the decision to hand a lesser punishment than they had wanted. Rusesabagina had pulled out of the trial, which rights group supporters and his family denounced as a sham. Neither he nor his lawyers were in court for the verdict, in which his co-defenders were sentenced for between 3 and 20 years. On Wednesday, Rusesabagina's daughter, Karine Kanimba, said the prosecution's move to appeal against the sentence showed the trial was politically motivated. It is not clear from the prosecutor's statements on Wednesday whether the appeal is against the jail sentence or the wider ruling. It noted that it had filed on appeal against the judgment of the High Court of 20th September 2021, referring to the case against Rusesabagina and his co-accused. Then head over to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where now the DRC's Defense Minister Gilbert Kambanda has been summoned by members of parliament to explain how Rwandan troops were able to cross the border. He is expected to say what measures have been taken so that such things do not happen again. Goma-based Virunga Business Radio quoted an MP as saying, on Monday, Rwandan troops crossed into the neighboring country in the restive northeastern North Kivu province, clashing with the DRC soldiers near the border. The United Nations-sponsored Radio Okapi said calm had returned to villages in Drcongo region following the incursion, and residents of 6 villages who had fled their homes had returned. And then we go to South Africa, where the country drug regulator has rejected the Russian-made coronavirus vaccine Sputnik V, citing some safety concerns that the manufacturer wasn't able to answer. The South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, or SAHPRA, said in a statement Tuesday that the request for Sputnik V to be authorized could not be approved at this time, referring to past failed HIV vaccines that used a similar technology. But the regulator added that its review process was continuing and that it was still open to receiving any further safety data from the Russian manufacturer. A large state study published in the journal Lancet last year in more than 20,000 participants found that Sputnik V was safe and about 91% effective in preventing people from becoming severely ill with COVID-19. And then still staying with South Africa, and South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa on Tuesday marked the 35th anniversary of the death of Mozambique's first president Samora Machel for vowing to go after Islamist insurgents wreaking havoc in the north of the country. Ramaphosa and Mozambican President Filipe Nyusi led a memorial event at the site of the plane crash that killed Machel while flying home from a conference in Zambia. On October 19, 1986, a Tupolev airplane carrying Machel crashed into mountains in South Africa near the border with Mozambique, killing among them 35 other people. And then we head over to Ethiopia, where Ethiopia's military launched a new airstrike on the Tigrayan capital Mekelle on Wednesday, the second bombardment this week against Tigray Liberation Front targets in the city. The raids mark a sharp escalation in the near 1 year long conflict in northern Ethiopia, pitting government forces and their allies against the TPLF, Tigray's once dominant ruling party. A government spokesperson confirmed the latest strikes. It was not immediately known if there were any casualties from the strike, which was reported by the TPLF as well as humanitarian and diplomatic sources and local residents. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government appear to be pressing a new offensive against the TPLF, which dominated national politics for almost 3 decades before he took over power in 2018. The conflict has already killed an untold number of people and triggered a deep humanitarian crisis, and the United Nations now says about 2 million people have been displaced and hundreds of thousands plunged into famine-like conditions. And then we conclude our bulletin this afternoon from Somalia, where elections of members of the lower house will start next week. Somalia's Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble has said the breakaway northwestern region of Somaliland is expected to elect 46 lawmakers, Prime Minister Roble said on Sunday. He also said he had agreed with leaders of the Somaliland political groups in Mogadishu, Abdi Hashi Abdullahi, the Speaker of the outgoing Upper Senate, and Mabdi Mohamed Guled, the Deputy Prime Minister, on holding elections. Once the indirect election of Somalia's 275 legislators is completed, they are expected to pick a federal president in a joint session with the 54 members of the Senate. The presidential poll had been scheduled for October 10th, but not even the election of senators was concluded. Some 48 senators were elected and 6 seats remain unfilled, 4 for Jubaland State and 2 for Galmudug. And that is the latest from the continent this afternoon. And of course, we have so much to talk about, but I'll not get I'll not get too much into the details of a lot of the bulletin that I've had for you this afternoon. Of course, I'd like to know the latest there from the Biafrans watching. This is something that you have been looking forward for us to talk about. So finally today, Kanu appeared in the court, in the High Court in Abuja, and I think that laid fears, because at some point, people are even wondering, is Kanu even still alive? Remember, the other time he was supposed to be presented in court, the federal state did not present him then, and they cited some logistical issues. So finally today, Nnamdi Kanu was presented to court, and of course that was done under very tight security measures, and he seemed okay health-wise, and hopefully he's not being mistreated in the prison where he's been held since I think the month of June, when he was illegally abducted back to Nigeria. Okay, and so as we speak right now, and you can confirm to me if at all you're from these areas, apparently in Imo State, Owerri, Orlu and Okigwe. Today, these towns have been deserted as the trial over the treason and terrorism charges against the leader of indigenous people of Biafra started. So apparently, banks are closed, schools are closed, markets, malls, fuel stations, and business outlets have today been shut down in that region in Nigeria. This is in solidarity with the case of Nnamdi Kanu, who made an appearance today in Abuja court, and of course he has since pleaded not guilty to the charges that have been amended against him by the federal government of Nigeria. So let me know if there's any new information from there that I might not have brought to our viewers' attention, but I think that is that. And of course, Kanu was led by his counsel, and that is Efyenyi Ejiofor and Aloy Ejimakor, among others, in the courtroom. And Kanu was, of course, arraigned today. A 7-count charge was last week slammed by the federal government against Kanu, who has been in the custody of the Department of State Services. So we'll wait to see how that will move. I don't know if they've given a date for the hearing to start, but Kanu has since pleaded not guilty. And even as the case, even as the court session was on, Sowore, Omoyele Sowore, tried to access the courtroom, but heavy security operatives cannot allow him to access, the court where to witness and to be part of the trial of Nnamdi Kanu. Sowore, who was dressed in traditional Isi Agu attire, was told to go back by the security forces, and he was not allowed. But he was able to speak to the journalists outside the court, and he said he was going to court for a number of reasons. Remember, he's also facing almost similar charges, and his case is still, active in the Nigerian High Court there. Sowore himself, he's an activist, and remember, he was arrested. Is it 2019 when he was coming from abroad in Europe, and he wore a T-shirt saying "We are all Biafrans," and that did not sit very well with the government of Nigeria. So they waited for him at the airport and they arrested him, and he was charged. No, the court did not find him guilty and ordered for his release, but the government of Nigeria continued to hold him for some time, and I think later on they released him. So today he wanted to stand in solidarity with Nnamdi Kanu, but he was denied access to the courtroom. So if there's anything else that we need to know about what is happening there, you can let me know. But that is the latest there from Nigeria. The other country that trouble seems to be brewing is Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland. And there has been protest after protest after protest. And we know this is the only absolute monarchy that is still remaining in the African continent, and nurses have been holding a protest, and about 30 of them were injured during pro-democracy protest when the security forces shot. How are you shooting nurses? Like, how are you just going to pick your gun and aim at... How do you do that? Why is that even happening in Eswatini? So a nurses union in Eswatini says security forces shot and injured at least 30 of its members who held a pro-democracy protest on Wednesday. Okay, so they're being political now. And the Swaziland Democratic Nurses Union said nurses and other workers demonstrating in the main city in Mbambane were met with what is called an unprecedented show of force by soldiers and police. Internet access, as we speak right now, Facebook has been shut down. They are in Eswatini because they are claiming that Facebook platform is being very irresponsible in spreading misinformation, which has contributed to the violent attacks and events across the country. Never mind that the police is the one attacking these nurses and other groups that have been protesting. And the Eswatini government has directed the country's main telecommunications, that is MTM, to shut down all these the Facebook media platform, social media platform. And of course, the anti-government protests have swept this Africa's absolute monarchy in recent weeks, and Southern African envoys are expected to travel to Eswatini in the coming days. I think that could be SADC to meet and see what's really happening there in Eswatini. So there's trouble. I don't know if this absolute monarchy will be able to hold for any longer, because I think the people of Eswatini, they seem to be ready for a new kind of leadership, perhaps a new kind of elective democracy. As you speak right now, the king has powers over even the judiciary. He hires and fires at will, and so there's no separation between, the government, executive, and the judiciary and parliament and other forms of other arms of government. There's not that separation, so it's very difficult even to hold the government accountable. So they're saying enough is enough, and they want a new way for them to be led. And so Alphonsus Okoli, thank you for the update. You're saying Mazi Nnamdi Kanu case has been adjourned till November 10th, 2021. Please, we should not fall for this ploy. This is just to enable a number. Okay, very well. So what you're saying is that this case has been adjourned to November 10th. Okay, but he pleaded not guilty, right, to the charges that have been leveled against him. Okay, am I right on that, I think? But thank you so much for that update, Alphonsus Sokoli, very much appreciated. And another place that we see some trouble as well are now the prosecutors in the case involving the Rwandan genocide hero Paul Rusesabagina now challenging the ruling that was made. Remember, he was given 25 years in jail, but they are saying no. What they wanted was for Paul Rusesabagina to be given a life sentence, and for what they term as he was found guilty of backing a rebel group that was behind deadly attacks that took place in Rwanda between 2018 and 2019. And so they're saying what they want is a life sentence, and they're appealing that sentence that was given. So you can see this has a political undertone to it. 25 years was not good enough. And of course, I think the government is pushing for Paul Rusesabagina to be given a life sentence. And him and his other co-accused, others got between 3 and 20 years. So he's the one who got the highest sentencing there. So yes, Alphonse Sokoli, yes, I know that he pleaded not guilty to all 7 counts that he's being charged with. But thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Okay, so anyway, and so we'll see if Rusesabagina, they'll be able to, the prosecutors will be able to get him to be given a life sentence there. Like 25 years is enough for a 67-year-old man. By the time he's leaving jail, he'll be like, what, 87? Like, what harm? Like, really? 25, no, not even 25, 67 plus added 25. He will have like 80, he will be like 82, so he will be too old, to go anywhere. So anyway, okay, we'll see how the story goes, so we shall be following it for you. So now, and in other news, by the way, IPOB is being accused by the Cameroonian government as being part of the people who could be funding the Anglophone separatist fighters in Cameroon, because according to the Cameroonian government, they're saying that the Anglophone separatist fighters have very sophisticated, weapons, and they could be exchanging and sharing weapons between them and the IPOB. So I don't know if you've come across this news, but also this is something that the Cameroonian government is bringing to the attention of the world. So that is what the Cameroonian Defense Forces spokesperson said there. So anyway, there's been flooding in South Sudan that has really caused a lot of havoc, and now so many people have been misplaced. The ones who are taken off from their homes went and sought for shelter elsewhere and now been forced to move. So it never stops with South Sudan there. And now it's the flooding that is really wrecking the lives of the people who have already been going through so much. And the flooding is something that has been in the recent past very yearly. It's been flooding in South Sudan. So hopefully a solution will be gotten soon. And what else? Of course, South Africa has rejected the vaccine from Russia, and of course it's citing some issues. But we do know this is when it comes to vaccine, it's very political. So, yeah, so South Africa does not want. So they're saying, until this vaccine has been confirmed, World Health Organization, I don't think has really has authorized the use of Sputnik V vaccine, and for obvious reasons. And so South Africa has refused to accept the vaccine. So interesting. Anyway, something else I wanted to talk about. President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa warning the Islamist insurgents who are wreaking havoc in northern part of Mozambique, the Cabo Delgado area, that they will be met with a lot of force. Like, the jihadists were wreaking so much havoc and causing so much pain, displacing so many people, killing so many people. Mozambique and South Africa share a border, and South Africa could not do anything to help Mozambique. Matter of fact, I think the jihadist group warned South Africa, and South Africa chose to stay away and could not help in what was going on. In fact, we've seen things move after the Rwandan army went in to help Mozambique. And Rwandan army is doing more than what the other SADC members are doing, whatever the troops from the SADC nations are doing in Mozambique. So now Cyril Ramaphosa is coming out and, trying to warn, these insurgents in northern Mozambique. And of course, he was speaking during the memorial of the first Mozambican president, who was killed on his way from Zambia. Samora Machel, who was killed. His plane was shot and he was killed between the border, I think, South Africa and Mozambique, thereabout. And 35 people also died in that plane crash. Okay. And so now he's standing out and warning the Islamist insurgents that they should not continue with what they're doing. He will come for them. Ramaphosa, you couldn't do anything. You could not even attempt to try and help Mozambique. SADC, dragged its feet, and it came in as after so much, damage had been done, and it didn't do much until Rwandan forces came to help Mozambique, and we've seen with that help, we've seen some results. Residents are going back to Cabo Delgado. Telecommunications infrastructure is being restored. That was, vandalized by the insurgents, and we've seen banks open and other sectors slowly coming back to normal. But that was until the Rwandan forces got there. So Cyril Ramaphosa, now stop. You can't take credit on this because South Africa watched helplessly while Cabo Delgado was being infested and became a killing ground for these Islamist insurgents. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Diaspora Dispatches. Hopefully I can see you here tomorrow, God willing, for more news across the continent of Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu. Bye-bye for now.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.